presentation from Professor Ogone, who is here with us. And I think I want to do justice introducing my panel. I would like to give each one of them just a minute as they settle in or as their thought process settles to quickly introduce themselves, and then I'm going to introduce the subject matter that we are going to discuss in this particular panel, after which they will give their interventions. We'll have the paper presentation, and then we'll invite you from the audience to be able to contribute. We shouldn't take so long. By the top of the hour, we should be done so that we can break for lunch. So without further ado, I will introduce Dr. Joshua. Please, you can have, then we'll have Director Robert. I'm sure I didn't do justice introducing him in the morning. I just used a few words that are on the program. Professor Ogone, who is smiling and raring to go. Joshua, please, if you can introduce yourself.
It's afternoon already, I think. Good afternoon, everyone. Joshua is my name. I work at Science, Technology, and Innovation Secretariat here in Uganda. That's an entity that coordinates research that translates into products in the country. I taught a bit in Makerere for some time, about 7 years, and then became self-employed. So it's from self-employment that I came to the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once more. My name is Robert Owino. I am the Institute Director of African Higher Education Research Institute. I have a background in research and development in higher education. It is my passion to develop the capacity of higher education to be responsive to sustainable development. And this series of conversations that we are part of today contribute to this narrative and in building local solutions to our challenges. Thank you very much. I look forward to engaging with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like you've been told, my name is Professor John Ogone. I am a social scientist by discipline orientation, particularly a linguist, and I serve in the board of AHERI. So the activity bringing us together is one of the activities that we carry out as an organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Interesting feedback from you in the audience. We also have eminent scholars in the audience and those who are online. So our discussion this afternoon will be looking at building research capacity in the East African region. And I will be moderating alongside Mr. Emmanuel Okoth, who is our online moderator. So Emmanuel, in case there are online interventions, please bring them to our attention. We are going to look at three main issues: theorization, conceptualization, and definitions in regionalism, and historical, cultural, and cultural perspectives of regional integration, and faculty and student mobility across regional economic communities. And to start us off, I came across a very interesting discussion under the convening of Professor Ogone during tea, in which he posited that Africans should stick to what they know best. Remember, we are talking about building research capacity in the East African region, and he's a linguist. And many of you have heard of the Loliondo stories and original African research that is purported to do things. I don't know, maybe if those things were seen in earlier generations or if we are still doing them to date, but there is undocumented research which really affects how people live in the African community, meaning that as Africans, we've been doing research for a while. I don't think some of these skills that scare many of the Africans from visiting the villages just come out naturally. I think there is a way in which they are passed from generation to generation, even though they are not written in a book. This knowledge is found somewhere. Maybe this is what Professor Gone was trying to mention. So while at that, Professor, I think I'll start with the second bit of the panel. First of all, do we have research capacity in the East African region? And if not, what do we need to do to build research in the East African region? And maybe you could focus on a historical context and bring in issues of culture that I have also pointed out.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator, for giving me the speaking role to respond to the observation you've made and the question that you have raised. The matter of whether we have research capacity, a capacity to conduct research in our institutions of higher learning in Africa is a question that has been considered at many levels. And I think it was Marie that was making a presentation, and she said that she worked for Association of African Universities. Yeah. So sometime I think in 1993, the Association of African Universities conducted a study, bringing together several universities in Africa to interrogate their capacity to conduct research. This study found many things, and there was a report to that effect which is accessible. I will show you the link when I make my presentation. And the questions raised by this study were fundamental. First of all, who conducts research? Usually it's academic members of faculties, lecturers, if you like, and professors. That is within the system of the university. Beyond that, research might be conducted in institutes or organizations with a mandate to conduct research. Coming here, I saw one written Uganda viral something. Uganda virus? Yes, which is not a university, but it's an institute with a mandate to conduct research on the virus or several types of viruses. So when we had our team, an issue came up. We had a long conversation on our table, and we were wondering if it is possible for us to conduct research at a certain level. And our debate was triggered by the comments we made here on science, technology, engineering, and math, focus on STEM. So we said, oh, are we predisposed to carry research, which is natural science oriented? Such kind of science will require a certain level of infrastructure development. And I remember Dr. Pande saying, do we have the equipment? If we don't have the equipment, we must try to have requisite equipment in order to conduct research. The other issue is, do we have funding? When Dr. Vincent was making his presentation in the morning, he said that we did not dedicate as much money for higher education in this region. And he gave examples of different regions and how much they participate in education at high education level. And I remember that Kenya was about 11 point something, and Uganda was 6.2, or was it 6.8? But it was thereabout. And Tanzania was, I think, a little lower. In fact, Tanzania was as low as 3 point something, maybe because of the differences in population. So the issue here is, do we have the capacity to conduct research? Yes, the capacity is there. First and foremost, I understand capacity as the individual researchers. Many people who already work in the universities or research institutes can carry out research because they are proficient in research methodology and methods of inquiry. But now, do they have requisite equipment? These organizations that they work, how about the governance systems or the management systems of research? What about money for research? Because research is costly. how much money is available for conducting research. Usually it is not much. And by and large, basic education brings forward so many people that want to access higher education, but we don't have the capacity sometimes to contain them. In Kenya right now, we have a president who has been in office for, I think, 1 year, and he came up with a new model of funding education. He has been talking about it for 1 year, and that model, those of us who come from Kenya know that that model is yet to be implemented. Whether it goes through the loan service, the scholarship service, or whatever, it has not come to. So my brief answer of whether we have the capacity to conduct research, my brief answer is yes, we have the capacity, but no, we don't have the capacity to fund research because we probably don't have the interest or we don't consider research very important. That is why we dedicate money, but not so much. But in there, there's a little detail, and it keeps coming back to my mind when I talk about the research priorities. What should we fund, and what factors surround that? I think details of this will come during my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think as you speak, you bring to fore, or rather, you bring to the fore some of the things that drive our society. You know, a lot of times, solution driven, or forgive me for using this word, gender driven, for lack of a better word. No, we are in African countries. And I want to bring in Joshua into the conversation. You've mentioned that you've been a private sector player. You've been within a research institute, or rather you've been within an academic institute, and now you've been given the responsibility to drive science, technology, and innovation organization. And I think Professor Ogone is raising issues that were mentioned in the morning about infrastructure and funding, the two. But looking at it from a solution-oriented perspective, is there any hope? Let me put it that way, because sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, we have indigenous research. I'm avoiding to go into details, which comes about because of the problems that we face in the community. Probably someone is trying to take away another person's resources, and the best they know is how to use the local approaches. But again, we have this research that we are talking about, which I think it's Dr. Bira who said it's somewhat Eurocentric. Let me use that term, and may not necessarily identify with the local community. So probably what are the trends from your perspective?
Thank you very much. Dr. Ongon says, we cannot say there is no capacity. The capacity is there. And I would want to add on that and say, there's a lot of money, even in the hands of individuals, that could do a lot of research. The only difference is that they have not seen the value of research the way other continents have seen it. When I was teaching at Makerere, I left because I was pushing an innovation in the market. I spent my time and partnered with colleagues in the Netherlands. We built an innovation for formulation. It was earning me more money than the one I earned at the university. I made a decision to quit. I remember They had just promoted him to be an executive director of an institute. I served for 6 months and resigned. The professor that really loved me to be there almost cried, because I was good as a leader. But I told him, first, I have given my time to this business that I'm building. I want to be a leader that will be coordinating work on fund. I assure you, I want to be in this office. So I was able to run the 6 months because it was COVID, so it was virtual. I was very active virtually, running an office from wherever I was. But when they opened up, 2000 was done. We are going into 2001. I couldn't manage to sit in an office and run that office of executive work, whereby everyone, you don't have a task list in a day. Whoever knocks enters and gives you a task list. So you are there just serving. How do I help you? No, you talk for 1 hour and then you didn't come with that task list. I couldn't imagine such kind of work. So I assured him I want it. If we only change the way we look at the benefit of research, we would return the money we put in farms which are collapsing. We would return the money we are putting in businesses we don't understand and are closing every day. People who are doing retirement projects that they invest in hundreds of millions and they lose money would be getting all that funding into research. What then should be the purpose of this research? I've learned over time, when we ran that innovation, it was purely private. And we would agree that those who have money bring money, and those who have brains bring brain. And that's the contribution. And when we started selling the service, you share the income. I teamed up with another colleague with the same energy. We are innovating around the protein. In as much as I am in science, technology, and innovation, I do not qualify for funding from the government because I am the one who gives funding, so I cannot give myself. But I use my salary, and he also uses his salary. We've run a research for 4 years to develop a product that will earn us billions of money. When we have no money, we don't do anything. When we get money, we start. Research is a journey towards developing a product. Imagine the research which was under this microphone. How much money have they earned? Imagine research which was under the camera. Behind the camera, there is the research. They have done research to improve it, to leave the black and white our colleagues used to have to a colored one. Imagine the research behind the virtual platforms. We need to shift from research with an end goal of a paper. When you tell people that the only output from your research is a publication, which you even pay to publish for you, then they have no interest to put in their money. When you look at students, every student in their minimal contribution to the research they do, either undergraduate or masters, they spend at least $1 million Ugandan shillings to do that research. What if you, a lecturer, align them into a project towards an innovation, and they bring that little money, contribute their time, because their time is always almost free. What they will need to spend on is just inputs into the research, but they will do everything almost for free. Even if you told them that we need to do a survey on the market for this before we refine our product for mass production, they will work on food because they are assured of a job, They are assured of shares into the company. They are assured of dividends after sales. But when we pitch this research to a student, to a lecturer, you know you can have a publication. What a publication. I have several publications, but I don't even remember most of them. But they don't make money for me. I go to internet, read people's publication in animal feed. On maximum inclusion is new raw materials. I go back to the website, to the application, and make a new rules for the app. And the app becomes the leading formulation tool on the phone. You sign free commons for those. I don't have to pay you. Because down you have put there even an icon of free commons. Free access. If I have paid, I pay a few dollars to the publication platform, and I have the data which you researched, a very good data. How can you research a recipe and publish it in a paper? You're just running mad. That is getting gold. Mined from a lot of hurdles, and you just put it on the road and walk to the room to sleep. They'll pick it. You spend time, do all the experiments to generate a very good recipe, which does an amazing thing. And then you think you are going to generate a lot of science impact in the publication by putting it in the high level publication platform. Because it is high end, it has a lot of new knowledge. I consider that. I don't publish that. I publish, the publisher of that water is paid every time you read it. The publisher of this microphone is paid every time you read this microphone. For them, they don't want you to read. They want you to use. So whoever uses the output of your research pays money. And the output of your research, which is a secret, is your intellectual property. And it is retained to you. And it is what makes you money. So we need to change the way we see research. You will attract an investor even at idea level. If you speak of a research proposal that results in a product, you will convince people to bring their salaries on the table to do research, to develop a product. But you won't attract anyone with a single coin into a research proposal to publish a paper. The only gain at publishing a paper is promotion, which you struggle with. You apply several times in your institution, and they are not giving it to you. And then you are annoyed. You even lose interest in research. Now I have already 7 papers, but they are not making me a professor. Yes, they should not. Because that is not going to change anything. Well, when they read it, what do readers change? Do they use it? And there are many publications about problems in Africa. People have studied problems that they do not, they even put in recommendations, solutions to do, but they will never progress the next level of doing solutions. They go and do another paper of another problem. So we are masters of understanding our problems in paper publications, but not masters in solving our problems. We put even recommendations for Europeans to come and solve those problems and sell to us the solutions. And all we know is to master which solution fits the other publication. Let's change the purpose of research. Institutions of higher education are leaders in this. They have misled us for long into publications. Lead us into the right direction, into products. Turn universities into factories of inventions. Why does a university, especially a private university which is flexible, teach engineering and fail to produce equipment? Are you crazy? You have free labor from first year to fourth year. And you also go and even put in a bid to ask for a supplier of an equipment. Why? Turn a university into a factory. You will have free labor. You will have no issues of, I hear there is no money for practical. They will do practical while they are making money for you. They will pay you tuition, give you free labor, learn very well, and even give you products to sell, and you get profits.
And they pass exams.
And they pass exam. And they become very good engineers. Because when they share their story, when I was in the other university, we worked on a vehicle. We produced vehicles in that university. We produced hiring machines in that university. So do you expect that engineer to look deficient in skills? No. Did you earn more money from that engineer? A lot. Because in the 4 years, he produced probably 1,000 units for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you've brought to the fore a lot of issues that our next speaker would probably answer, Director Robert. And while you are at it, I found myself jogging my memory on what exactly research is. Because maybe we could be missing a point as earlier as that. But more specifically to Director Robert, we are speaking about higher education here. And from the presentations we've had since morning, questions have been asked. It seems that lower education might be driving our lower or no education might be driving our economies, because we've been talking about informal sectors and formalizing them. I think those are the issues that maybe Joshua is trying to bring to the fore. And my question to you is, how do we articulate the value of higher education? I think the need is not in doubt, but how do we bring to the fore the value? You have studied higher education as a subject. Why is it of value to the global north and not in the global south? Where could we be missing the point?
Thank you. That's a research question that warrants a paper, but I will attempt to address it by first saying or quoting the idiom, "He who pays the piper calls the tune." And in essence, where do we follow, or where is the value? Director Barry, our moderator, asks, why does the West value basic research for not profit? And while we think that when an engineer gets money, then the value of the engineer has improved vis-a-vis an engineer who does not make money. But if we have rich engineers in a society that has no values, then we have a bigger problem. And the challenge of creating value of higher education is systemic, talking about issues of funding or money or payment. Those are just symptoms. And to address that, you cannot say we are going to move one item and answer it. It's a whole systemic perspective. We have to look at our assessment tools of education. How do you value education? Who designed these assessment tools? How do we value our own value system? So it is systemic. If people are not, if professionals are not being enumerated appropriately, that's a systemic issue. It's not that there is a problem with that profession. Ideally, all professions should add value to the larger community, and there must be a balance. We must accept that at systemic level, we have to address our our diversity. Any system that does not appreciate diversity and appropriately recognizes them, either by remuneration or identification, will now want everybody to behave in a particular way. Our value system of money, where earlier on they say that if I remember the name, where there's mafuta mingi. Not everyone appreciates wealth, money. There are some who appreciate knowledge. There are some who appreciate understanding or peace. And for us to address this issue, we have to look at our society's consummate. The traditional African culture had a very strong justice system without jails or prison, yet it functioned. We had a very knowledgeable society, but had no exams, yet knowledge was indeed transferred. And there was a way in which you could know this person is knowledgeable in this particular area. So it goes back to when we are studying higher education at systemic level, we need to look at right from the basic education, how does it feed into the tertiary or mid-section and ultimately to the higher education. Looking at either section separately poses a problem. The structural adjustment programs by the Bretton Woods institutions of mid-80s to early 90s focused a lot on primary education, which in our understanding and knowledge now is not a productive area of the economy or the society. Now we want to focus on higher education and the stock of privatization and bringing monetary value to higher education. Yet, societies that have industrialized never privatized their higher education. It was the government that actually supports the industrialization process, which is based on knowledge. The Asian tigers invested a lot in tertiary education to change the economy. It wasn't an aspect of investors coming in. So for Africa, we need to define ourselves. We need to look at what point or what stage are we in economically, and where do we want to progress before we adapt or we push for solutions that are temporary. So it is a systemic issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we've gotten an interesting perspective or paradigm. At this point, I'll invite Professor Ogone to take us through his paper presentation for the next 10 minutes. The panel will stay here. I know there are many questions in the audience, and then I will also invite him back here as I invite the audience to share their perspectives. We'll still be within time for lunch, though I know the tea is just settling in your systems. So don't worry. So Professor, if you can make the presentation and then rejoin us up here, or rather on the panel, for questions and comments from the audience, including online.
Thank you, everyone. I will conduct you through this very brief presentation. And Barry, I'm just realizing, I think I should have presented first before we got into the panel session. I have written there towards capacity building for research in African higher education institutions, and then added from models to programs. I did that because I am aware that there is no point at which we will say that we have been capacity built optimally to conduct research as a continent and as institutions of higher learning. And so this is a point in the journey of getting ourselves capacity built. Basically, we are interested in research capacity development because the generation and application of new knowledge is a precondition to all development initiatives in our society. And I'm reminded about what Joshua mentioned, that the research itself should not be an end in itself. We should get to the point of producing things that are of functional use to communities that we operate in. There is no use in generating knowledge that no one will use. If they can pay for that knowledge, the better, because it has practical implications in their lives. So this is why research and the development of research capacity that develops it or that causes it to move forward is important to us. Of course, there may be common models here and there of funding higher education in Africa. And it is not possible in the time permitted to enumerate all of them. But for my presentation, I have referred to a great extent to some of the findings from the Association of African Universities. But it seems that there are three main sources of funding for research in higher education in Africa. The first is government, which means that taxes are collected and then a budget is made, and then the exchequer releases money dedicated for development of education and research programs. Some of that money goes towards funding higher education and research activities there. So yes, government makes money available for research. The other option is called market-based models, where someone else, other than government, pays for research. I remember Joshua saying that individuals who have the money can fund research, okay? And individuals who are gifted in conducting investigations can carry out research, isn't it? God rarely gives you everything, okay? So that is why it should be no surprise that I might be a great researcher, but I don't have exactly a lot of money, isn't it? Someone else will have that money. Was it during tea where we are saying that people are endowed differently? Someone will grow bananas and then someone else will buy bananas, isn't it? Because someone doesn't have the patience to see a banana tree grow, but they have the money to buy and choose a good one, isn't it? Now, so for many countries in Africa, sometimes parents, sponsors, or guardians pay for research activities for their students who participate in research. In Uganda, in Kenya, in Tanzania, we have private universities. So education can also be funded in that manner from private sources. And then there's a cocktail of both, where government makes a contribution and to some extent, families or individuals pay for the difference. So we have those three models. The first is public funded, the other one is private and market driven, if you like. And then within that continuum in between, you might get other sources of funding for research. Okay. No. All right. What are some of the determinants of models before we make decisions of which model to use to fund research at the university? What do we need to look at? One is research priorities. What do we have an interest in? What do we want to investigate? What kind of knowledge do we want to gather, and for what use? And then we will also have to look at the fact of relevance and quality of research. In Kenya, I think there is a commission, I know, in charge of charge of nuclear something. I don't know if anybody has heard of nuclear agency. I'm not very sure if Kenya has reached a point where Kenya should think about nuclear energy. I believe we have enough sunlight, don't we? So we have got to the point that we have a commission in place to look at nuclear issues ahead of harvesting solar, wind, or geothermal energy. So we need to think about relevance and quality of the research we conduct. And in our situation, we have increasing demand for higher education, particularly university education. And I think this is the same case in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Rwanda, and elsewhere. Everybody wants to go to the university. It doesn't matter how. In fact, some people even cheat. They cheat in exams in order to find their space in the university so that they can earn their space on a table one day to make a contribution when people are holding a discussion. But they begin by saying, I was at the University of Nairobi, or I was at Makerere, or I was elsewhere. So there is this demand. So we are bringing in thousands, hundreds of thousands of people into the university. So we must begin to figure out how we will cover the cost of the education. Another thing is that there is always lack of money for research. Somehow, somewhat. Even though Joshua said that there is always money, except we don't know where to put it. At least we also know that there is always no money. That is why you can write thousands of proposals, but usually no one is willing to fund. Where after you write a proposal, you submit it, the first line usually reads the same. That due to the large number of applicants and due to limited resources, it was not possible to fund your request, even though we encourage you to try the next time. That happens, isn't it? Probably because of lack of resources. But sometimes, as we occasionally share with Director Robert, sometimes they just do knowledge mining. People who advertise research bits write very complicated expression of interest proposals so that you read for a week in order to understand. Then you don't sleep for 2 weeks generating a response, an expression of interest, isn't it? Then they say, you are among the people we have chosen to now develop full proposals. When you do that, you are above the sky. You write the best proposal, then suddenly no money is coming. Yeah. But the proposal doesn't come back to you, does it? No. You will have contributed to the world of proposals, isn't it? And people already have your ideas somewhere, and you have no intellectual rights to it. It happens all the time. And it happened to us even recently without saying where. Then there is the research capacity deficit. This is a very important factor. I was sharing with my friend, Dr. Pande there, when we were at Ginger. You remember telling me that you're developing postgraduate programs for masters and PhD in your discipline, and you've been working on that for a while. That means that basically you don't have postgraduate students in your line. Now, the moment you don't have postgraduate students in your line, the research capacity has been undermined, because usually we don't expect undergraduate students to be very actively involved in research procedures or processes. So the more postgraduate programs you have, they have the likelihood that you will engage in more research activities. That capacity usually happens almost in a systemic manner. If you lack this, the other one falls in place. And we have inadequate facilities. Africa has one consistent problem called lack of. There's always lack of something. Yeah. I know in my university, name withheld now, there is a school of engineering. But I have had students themselves complain that they don't have equipment for engineering. So they learn through models that they can watch online without actually interacting with equipment. Yeah. In the University of Leipzig, where I studied for my PhD in Eastern Germany, the School of Engineering actually produced cars, so that the student who goes into that school will have known how to produce a car. And I remember that the Leipzig factory of BMW is where, in the university is where BMW is made. And this car called Mini is made at the engineering school of that university. So you go into that university ready to be an engineer and someone who, if you're going to study mechanical engineering, you can produce a car. Here, I think we end up producing people who can describe a car. I mean, this is the truth, or is it false? They know how a car works, but they cannot make. Maybe that's a question of inadequate facilities. And then there are governance issues, research management. If you have a president somewhere, the next thing this president will do is to appoint his relative or friend to be in charge of a university without an idea in the world how to run research programs. Okay? I don't know if that happens here, but I know it happens elsewhere. Where we appoint someone into a position because we know them. So you end up with a situation that is dysfunctional. Someone who has never conducted research cannot be in charge of managing research procedures and processes. So this is another problem. I want to conduct you through this very briefly, the higher education funding landscape in Africa. And I just want you to think of a scale from 1 to 10. And then we see how African countries spend on educating their students at university. And this is as a result of a study conducted by the African Association of Universities. On a score of 1 to 10, it was reported that only Swaziland, Lesotho, Botswana, Malawi, and Namibia scored above average, but that is between 5 and 10, in that order. And in East Africa, according to AAU, Kenya spends only about 2 out of 10. That is in terms of the budget allocation on higher education. Rwanda spends slightly more than 1 out of 10. Okay. Our host country, Uganda, is reported there to spend less than 1 out of 10. But Uganda is not alone. Here, Uganda is with Cameroon, Togo, Madagascar, and Guinea. But that is not bad enough. There are countries who do not spend. It is reported here by AU. They do not spend anything that you want to write home about in university education. These countries include Liberia, Guinea-Bissau, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, just across from here. On to a scenario here. According to the Association of African Universities, Africa accounts for only 0.6% of global gross expenditure on research and development. And I think Dr. Vincent told us about this, something related to this in the morning. And with South Africa, hey, sharing as much as 90% of this contribution. Can you imagine that? I've had the occasion to visit a few universities in South Africa. When you publish a paper that makes it to the high index journals, you are paid a certain amount of money as a member of faculty, and they fund research programs quite a bit, and they're very competitive. So they spend much more. So of that 0.6%, 90% is why we make it at zero. We make it to 0.6%, and that comes from South Africa, which means that they spend much more in research. The other result is that as of 2014, less than 2% of world researchers and about 1.5% of the world share of scientific publications were provided by sub-Saharan African countries. we score very low in publications. I don't know what that means. Does that mean we know nothing, or it means we don't publish? Or we are unfamiliar with the subject of the publications? Yeah. They said that you cannot test how well a monkey can swim by throwing it into the water, or how well a fish can climb by throwing it on top of a tree. All right. So we are not doing very well in the publication area. And a reason is given there by some two researchers there. One of them called Shabani, the other one is Okebukola. 2013, 2015 said that in Africa, research activities are generally underfunded. So how do we address the challenge of funding higher education in Africa? There are many ways. I'll just mention them without explaining. Many countries give higher education loans to students who are capable, but who lack the capacity to access higher education. I think that happens in Kenya. It also happens in Uganda, higher education loans. I think it's in Tanzania too. And there are also scholarships for outstanding students, the ones that perform well and need to be supported through scholarship programs. And then there are bursaries that are given through different agencies, institutions, programs, and the like. And some countries have their own contextualized systems. In Nigeria, they have something called the envelope system or the TET fund. In Senegal, they have performance contract funding. And in some cases, they have block grants or funds which are dedicated for higher education purposes. And to move forward, some countries have something called diversified financing systems, where the government contributes some money through the allocations by the exchequer, but also sponsors make their own contributions. The universities themselves also may have income generating activities. Dr. Joshua, I'm sure when you were at Makerere, the university offered some services to be paid for. Maybe transport services, maybe accommodation services, maybe professional services through consultancies and so on, so that you pay the university. And also if someone won a research grant and it is administered by the university would retain maybe 10 to 15% for administration, which can be used to defray other costs in the university. And I saw somewhere that in Uganda, when the budget is drawn and dedicated for education purposes, and especially higher education, usually they fund higher education institutions through 3 blocks. That is, they dedicate money for remuneration, recurrent expenditures such as salaries and the like. For development, this is capital development, which means that the government funds buildings, halls, probably laboratories, and sometimes equips them. And then, of course, the usual money for operations and maintenance for programs in the university. And this is not different from what we have in neighboring countries, apart from Uganda. And I was reading this somewhere, which is what I have just mentioned, that universities like Makerere have done this for a very long time. They have come to learn that a single source alone from the government is not enough to fund all academic and research programs in the universities. So they diversify. And sometimes they work with development partners. I believe that an established institution like Makerere, University of Dar es Salaam, or University of Nairobi are already in cooperation and partnership with many development partners and research organizations working in joint projects. I will not conduct you through these categories of funding because of time, but I want to skip that slide and remind us that research capacity development in African higher education institutions revolve around the capacity of individuals to conduct research in this institution. That is, whether they have the requisite knowledge or skills to conduct research, and the quality of the research environment, or the conditions for research. Do they have laboratories? Do they have workshops? Are they equipped? And then the elephant in the room, which is funding. Is money available for research procedures? And then, of course, there is the infrastructure. By the way, some of our universities don't look good at all. I don't know if you have noticed this. Sometimes you walk into a university and right from the gate, you feel depressed. You feel like there's a problem in the institution. Yeah. So you wonder if they would have the requisite infrastructure to deliver research outcomes. And then there's the question of incentives. What kind of reward system or what kind of motivation systems do we have to encourage researchers to engage in research activities? And then there is the time available to conduct research. Maybe if I told you this, you wouldn't believe it. As a professor, I teach 3 undergraduate courses now. 2 of my classes have 250 students each, so that is 500. But one particular class has 710 students. So how many are those? We are talking about 1,210. Then I have postgraduate students, okay? A master students and also PhD students, and they write theses, and you have to mark them. Now, when you are done with all this, you still have to attend a AHERI conference in Entebbe, and also you have to be a family man somewhere, isn't it? And you have to remain normal enough to operate in the communities that we operate in. It's not easy, so that there is no time for research. Those of you who have taught in the university know that when you have a class of 700, so basically you have 2 continuous assessment tests, and each student will write in the various handwritings that they have, will write up to 6 pages. So basically, 6 pages times 700 gives you how many pages? You have to read that. So you can imagine. And you know, when you're reading an assignment, you're not just reading. These things are also entering your mind, okay? And your mind is processing them before you put a value on what the student has written. So these things access your brain, and sometimes you are hardly normal when you're done with marking, because several ideas have crossed your mind. Do you still have time left to conduct what we call research? These are fundamental issues that we have dealt with. So quickly, I just need to remind us that research in Africa might be conducted in institutes or in other organizations that have the mandate to carry out that exercise, but they're mainly conducted in the universities. Unfortunately, research institutions such as universities are usually very much underfunded, and especially for purposes of research. So how ready are we? Back to the question that Barry asked me, and this is how I will conclude. How predisposed are we as higher education institutions of Africa to conduct research? One, we are somewhat low in aptitude because our postgraduate programs are normally not strong enough to produce a critical cohort of people able to conduct research. That is one. The second thing is the issue of lack of requisite facilities and incentives. And even when they are there, they're usually not adequate because of the large numbers that we have admitted in these universities. And then third is the problem of the capacity to manage research activities, which is more or less a governance question. Fourth is funding. And fifth is the issue of research teams. We still like to operate research programs in silos, so that a group is conducting a study at Nkumba University, but for some reason, this group cannot communicate with another group that is conducting the same kind of research at Mbarara and the same kind of research at Makerere. So we are at cross purposes. We have little resources, but instead of pooling them, we choose to approach this idea separately. So that is a problem. And then there is the issue of our capability to conduct formal training in research methodology. There was a time that the German ambassador visited our university, and our vice chancellor was very happy to announce to him that we had 150 postgraduate students at that time, masters and PhD. And then I remember that the ambassador asked a question that came from like the blue sky. He said, "Now, how many professors do you have in this university?" And the vice chancellor said at that time, there were 11 full professors. Says 11 full professors against 150 postgraduate students. How is that even possible? So it means that if you're going to teach a class of 50 students research methodology, I don't know how you're going to do it. Even if you manage to teach it, you'll not do it well. The moment you don't do it well, there's a problem with capacity. Then we have invigorated research activities. There are universities that are registered and accredited that do not have any research activity going on. Now, if that happens, and I know that it does happen, then it's a big challenge, because these research activities will bring together research teams, among them early career researchers who are then mentored by senior professors or researchers in order to conduct research. So there are other things we need to think about in order to solve this problem. One, funding. We have to increase research funds. And because it is difficult, Joshua, to order individuals to fund research, it is easier to order government, isn't it? Because these are the people we elect in position, so we can tell them, give us more, all right? But you cannot order the owner of this house to give you money for research. So funding has to go up. And then we have to strengthen graduate programs. So when we are writing undergraduate programs to teach, we must have postgraduate programs that correspond to those undergraduate programs, so that we produce the critical cohort of people that will take our research agenda forward. And then we have the idea of specialized centers of excellence. I think it was Dr. Vincent who mentioned this in the morning, that there are people who are usually good at something. Those days of the University of Eastern Africa, I think Makerere was good in medicine. University of Nairobi was known for engineering, maybe. And then Dar es Salaam was known for law. I think so. So there are people who are definitely good in something because they have the capacity to implement that program. Why don't we let them do it? And then somebody else will do something else. Then there's regional cooperation, which is what we are working on as AHERI now. We need to share capabilities that we have so that together with a university in Uganda, we can work on a joint program and implement it. We can do things together like we are doing now, so that we share our research interests, agenda, or ideas. And this can go a long way in not just keeping our research programs alive, but also in properly integrating the East Africa region. Yesterday, when we were crossing into Uganda from Kenya, we asked ourselves, you know, I think all of us here have some of the East African passport. But it took us how many minutes to cross in? About an hour. It's difficult, by the way. I think it's also difficult for people from Uganda to cross into Kenya, even though you're carrying an East African passport. I thought it was supposed to work like if you go to Europe. There was one day I woke up in Berlin, I crossed into South Amsterdam, crossed back into Cologne, got to Paris, and used the channel to South London, same day. Nobody asks you any question because you have a visa for one of the countries in the Schengen republics. But here it is still so complicated for us. And it happened to us, was it last year when we were going to Tanzania? Yes, when we were going to Arusha, there was again commotion at the border, even though we have the East African passports. So if we are going to do research programs together, I think this will be an important step towards the integration of this region. And then there is the research communication or research dissemination. When you have conducted your research, the question that you must answer at the end of it is, so what? What is the use of this research? It was Joshua who told us that if you're going to conduct a wonderful research and then put it together in a journal paper and send it to a high impact journal, it is kept there in some online repository so that it is accessed by only some people, then that is no use to your society. Because usually the research is developed here, but the results are in some library somewhere in Europe. And you walk around feeling important that your publication is in a library somewhere. Yet the outcome of your research doesn't reach anyone around. No wonder we could not answer the question, how do we make the societies that we live in value research? So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That was my brief presentation. I hope that it will be able to generate debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I know that we are pressed for time. In fact, I'm reminded of a Ghanaian proverb. Ghana is this source of wisdom for Africa, that a bird which overstays on a branch attracts a stone. But at the same time, I also appreciate another Ghanaian proverb that wisdom is like a wide tree. Not a single individual can be able to embrace it. So we have tried to embrace wisdom on the panel here, but now we want to open up to the floor because we also have experts that are sitting in the floor to reflect on the many issues that we have discussed, and possibly those who are online as well. So I don't know if there are any quick interventions or thoughts in addition to what has been mentioned by Professor Ogone. I think as a research institute, what we are there to do is to state what needs to be done. We have elected leaders, we have institutional actors at national and at regional level, whom we believe in due course, all this information will reach them, or they'll find a way of even watching what we've been able to record as they perform their legislative duties. But over and above what the panel has mentioned, could there be any other contribution from the audience or from online before I give my panelists closing remarks, an opportunity to make closing remarks? Yes, I see Daniel. I see Victoria. Okay, I see very many. I will start with Dr. Pandey, then Daniel, then Jacinta, then Victoria. Is there anyone online? There's one part online. Yeah, so Dr. Oh, and Mr. Odidi there. So I'll request for assistance to move the mic. Please try to be brief.
Thank you so much, Director Barak. I just have a few comments just to echo what Professor has actually shared. I'm happy that he's saying that we need regional cooperation. And just to add on to that, we need what we call collaborative research. The world nowadays is basically focusing on interdisciplinary, inter-institutional research. And as EAC, this is one area that we really need to strengthen so that we do a regional research that will actually speak to our problems, because we have got regional problems that do not stand alone to our countries. And apart from that also, we also need the PPPs, the public-private partnerships when it comes to research. And so we need also to rope in, maybe as a way of policy, to rope in the industries to answer to what the panelist was talking about. After doing research, so what? The industries actually, because we don't have all the money, the industries need to come on board so that as we do research that will actually speak to their needs, and then they pick it up for the production of the products. Thank you.
Mr. Odidi?
Thank you very much to the panel and the discussion that you've just had. Unintentionally, it has painted a very gloomy picture of research in our institutions, of higher institutions. And it has just left me wondering, do we have any successful models of institutions that mentor research and not just stop at research that end at publications, but also research that ends up bringing solutions or turned into action? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can have Jacinta and then Daniel.
Yes, thank you very much, Jacinta, once again. I'm very much excited about this conference and its composition. But when I look at the composition of the participants to this conference, it is lacking the key players. And of these, who should be the policymakers and the investors, who are supposed to be the major funders of the research. Because most of the presentation by Professor, he mentions research needs funding. And most of the funding comes from the government and investors. And these are the people who should be here to listen to these brilliant views from different speakers, such that next time when we are talking of research, at least they are able to know what is expected of them as policymakers, as government, as funders, such that it can move forward. And of course, as we mentioned about research, one of my colleagues, Mr. Isiko, was saying everyone can be, Dr. Isiko, sorry, said everyone can be, can develop a product or can do research. But I think they are supposed to be researchers and implementers. Those who have studied from these developed countries, they are those technical universities and Hochschules. And when I try to understand them, some are for research, they generate knowledge, and then the Hochschules, they are implementers, all putting knowledge into action. So which can be even be applied in our region. As we are saying, centers of excellency, what some universities can be turned into the centers for generating knowledge, and others turned into centers for implementing the knowledge that has been produced. So I would think that we are gifted differently. There are those who are able to use skills. I'm able to interpret, but I'm not able to implement. So there are those who are gifted differently. We should look at all avenues to improve research. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Daniel?
Thank you very much. Hope you can hear me. I hear Jacinta's point. I'd like to say that I work with the Science, Technology and Innovation Secretariat, just as my colleague Joshua. One of the things that the Secretariat has done is they have changed the thinking of research. And we do a lot of research and development. And we use what we call data-driven approaches to decision making. So before you do something, you must have at least a certain data attached to your decision, and this data should be really interpreted. So we did what we call the industrial value chain analysis, which is a tool that uses data to make appropriate decisions. And we changed the way funding is being given to innovations. Before, there used to be a lot of funding for publications. And at the Secretariat, this changed whereby if you think that you're going to come and just simply conduct research for a publication, you will not be funded. But in case it has a potential drive towards a product that is going to contribute to the socio-economic transformation of the country, then definitely you're funded. And we have seen this grow and grow over a given period of time. Getting back into the discussion here, integration of research and development is a key driver. And it's about a collaborative institutional framework for R&D. It's such that when someone does research, for example, in Mbarara, they can co-collaborate with someone from AHERI or from Kenyatta University to be able to drive a point home. We have seen institutional collaboration at higher academic levels, probably at PhD, but it is not happening strongly at the graduate level. Why? Because there is a very weak collaboration mechanism. And besides, when these students at undergraduate level, they are just simply conducting research such that they are awarded a certificate, okay, for completion of a certain degree program. I think we have to change the narrative. When it comes to engineering, we've seen Kusitama University students doing very interesting fabrications. But the challenge is that these fabrications end up being into the museum of the university. Can we change the narrative such that some of these researches and product development end up onto the market? And now that calls for specialized funding. Recently, there was funding that is being awarded to universities to be able to build their respective research beds. For instance, I think Makerere received something like around 30 billion. Barara received 1 billion. Some other universities received like around 1 billion, 2 billion. And this one is to be able to build the research ability of the institutions such that they can be able to drive products into the market. So market-driven research and product is important. And one thing is to look at commercialization. Africa as a whole faces two fundamental problems. That is the first problem is poverty, and the second problem is underdevelopment. And underdevelopment can be solved through regional integration and building appropriate frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Victoria?
Thank you very much. My question starts from Dr. Joshua. You had mentioned about the output of one's research is supposed to be their intellectual property. And based on that, there was also the new concept of funding, which your colleague has mentioned about the proof of concept funding. And there's also the open source results funding, where you are now forced that whatever research you're doing, the results cannot be contained by you or patented by you, but it's open to be used by anybody else. How does that affect the motivation to do research when you know that it is not going to be your intellectual property, or you're not going to benefit from it as you had indicated? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I think there was an online question which was displayed on the screen from Mildred. How can artificial intelligence be ethically used to free up time for faculty and help in research activities? Very interesting question. I think there's another panelist, please take note of that. There has been research done at universities, but for many years, the university industry linkage has been minimal. What can be done in regards to policy formulation to have this problem solved? Thank you. Do we have any other question? Kamugisha Dennis? Thank you very much. I'll come back to the panel, and I'll start with Dr. Isiko, just to respond in no particular order to the concerns that have been raised, and also give your closing remarks. Then we will have our Institute Director, Robert, also take on some of the issues that have been raised. And finally, Professor Ogone will wrap it up for us, and then we'll conclude the session. So Joshua?
Thank you very much. I'll start with Jacinta. I don't agree with you that some people are researchers and others are not. Whoever is married did a PhD. They didn't just write their thesis, but to get a person to marry, you did a lot of research. You used the participatory approaches as the dating you used to do and friendship. You did all the informant interviews, asking people about that man, about that girl. Observation, that was the first. Somebody observes and says, ah, yeah. And then they go ahead to understand more. So everyone is a researcher. The other one is every time you go to buy things, you do research. Everyone is a researcher. So research should be taken as a method to solve problems. It is not a profession. No. If I want to know problem, I do research. Research is me. If you delete the R, it is searching. You are searching for the problem. If I want to know the solution, I search for the solution. If I want to know whether the solution solves the other problem, I search for that. That's why you do an experiment. If I want to know whether people buy that solution, I go for the market. I search. You get me? So search is a methodology. It's not a profession. Do not be locked in the mindset that me, I am a researcher and those are users. No. Even users use yours. They research. Who reads a paper that you publish without searching on the internet? So the person who is reading your paper is doing research. And you who published it did research. So who is the implementer? So everyone is a researcher. So research is a methodology to solve societal problems. So do not take it as a profession. It is just that people do different types of research. Some do casual, others do academic. It depends on what you want to do. Others do marriage research, purchase research, market research. So define the type of research you want to do. So that means if people have capabilities to analyze, to design a good research, it comes to what Professor mentioned. Let us address teamwork. Let's build teams so that everyone brings on table what they can do in that team that is developing a solution using research as a method. You are good at humanities, go and understand what people really need. If you do a product, you have to test for preferences. This design you see here, there was research whether this bottle should be the one they will use for this water. But they don't publish it. But let me tell you, they took different designs and put them on table for people to prefer in the market. The preferred one is the bottle they use. The brand. You get me? So, but the one who is good at marketing and to go and sell this water doesn't even know the process of coming to this brand. They just tell them our water is good. But he doesn't know how they determine the water being good. My scientific specialty is animal feed. We do a lot of research behind the formula that we produce, behind the feed that we produce for fish feed, for instance, behind the bag, which is on the market, there is a pond is running feed as a farm to confirm that the feed conversion rate we are telling you is the right one. Do we publish that? How do we publish it? We publish a bag with FCR. And you buy say this FCRI is small. I think I need only 1 kilogram to feed fish and have 1 kilogram of fish. That is the best feed. And then you buy. But behind the bag, there's a lot of research going on continuously for every batch. If a raw material disappears, you make a new formula and go through the same process. I put all that cost on you who is using my feed. You think I incur that? No. I just put it in the cost price and you pay because I am always on top of the game on my product. So you have to pay for that. So will I lack funding for research? No. Because I'm selling the best product. So you pay me, I deduct the money for the research and eat the remaining as profit. And for you who is in the university thinking that my work is to do research and the other work is to implement, you are there publishing many papers and lamenting about them. We should stop that. I'll go to Victoria. Victoria asked that, where is the motivation? I think we were doing an analysis about 2011 applications for intellectual property in the world. And Uganda had less than 1% of applications, not already patents. And there are 3 categories of IP. You either have a patent as an inventor, or you have modified somebody's invention and have a design, which is called industrial design, or you are registering a trademark. Of all those 3, Uganda had less than 1% of the application there. Why is that so? Because 1, we even don't know what should be done after your research. When you do, the only ultimate purpose of research that we have made known to people in academia is a publication. You get me? And once you publish like this, you have lost intellectual property. Because when you file an application, they tell you, but this paper, these things you are claiming to be yours are everywhere. So literally, you would first go and file an application before you publish, if you want so. You get me? So that demotivates. And actually, Daniel was telling you, you look through applications of academic staff and laugh, because his gain is an allowance in that grant. And his budget is almost 50% allowance. He doesn't even want you to push him to develop a prototype because you will make him lose to earn money in the next spot of funding. So they are resistant to pushing them to the market. And immediately they tell you, I am a researcher, not a businessman. You are teaching in a private university which is running business. Why are you there when you are not a businessman? So, if I were you, I would pick business people. And that one comes to somebody who asked about industry as I finalize. Says, how do you now merge university with industry? They have many research outputs. There are 2 scenarios, and one of these is what you need to take. There's a scenario of you sitting in your office with your students, and they are in their final year and they have to do a research project, or they are PhD or master, and say, look for a problem. Then they go and say, I think this problem is easy. They go look for a small problem there. Their aim is to graduate. And then you spend all your time, 3 years, reading thesis. He said, by the time you finish reading it, it is in you, and you can't even think of your other things. And there is this approach of me walking to, let us say, here in Uganda, I can walk to MTN, and I ask them, tell me the problems you are facing. People are frauding around in transfer money. That is a big problem. I say, okay, let me go and meet my students in telecom engineering and see what we can do for you. you will start a partnership immediately. They will be the one who's calling you every now and then. Did you find any? Because they are losing money. They are losing users. They are losing your clients because of that problem. When you come with a solution, you just present a proposal and they will say, we are going to fund it. Now, before you start working, now negotiate for terms. As a professor, how does my student gain? Then that's where you get terms. Now the student will automatically become a staff. For me, I have to get loyalties. You pay them for this long. The deal is done. You will spend sleepless nights in the lab to solve that problem. Huawei in Asia was growing very fast before it was stifled and refused them to use Android. They had 60% market share on phones in Africa. How did they do that? They partnered with universities. They would go, I think it was the university staff that introduced that, I would believe. They would come and pitch their latest model of phone to telecom students. Telecom students say, I am going to change the battery, me, I'm going to change the camera, me, I'm going to work on this. So they are given a year to innovate around a new model of a phone. They come and pitch to Huawei. The best idea is taken on. And they introduce what they call employee ownership company. When you came in with the idea, the first benefit you got was shares into the company. The second benefit was a job. That means you earn twice. You earn your salary and you earn a dividend as a shareholder. Every year, they were releasing new models. They addressed Africa's problem. The first smartphones we really circulated in Africa was for Huawei. So we can partner with industry in that way. Let's use research as a methodology. Let us not fear and start leaving students to think of their own problem. Benefit, I will end with this university professor in America. I interfaced with him online about 3-4 months ago. He's a professor in food preservation. He has 40 patents. He has over 200 publications. Out of the 40 patents, 10 are products. He has the latest models of microwaves. Where does he sit at the university? Does he earn money yet? Using the money he earns is, I think, 10 times. He earns 10 times from his patents and research than his salary. Why is he still at the university? Has facilities. If he leaves, he will not make that money from patents. So he's here from students. He sits there, but his actual money is in patents. We can take the same model. You have a free office. You are paid for sitting in it. You have very brilliant students whose time, day and night, is to earn a score. Why don't I tap the score on a prototype? You will graduate once you've done this prototype. And the people will sleep that night, call their fathers to give them money to develop a prototype. And you have it. I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My closing remarks will be directed by the question on successful model of research. And I'll address it with Jacinta's question of why there are no industrialists here and government or policymakers. We have found, or we are towards getting the solution. However, there is no coordinator or central point that coordinates all these answers. And that is where our problem is. What Dr. Isiko is doing is very good in a lab and within the government. what Professor Ogone is doing is very good within the academia. What the industry is doing also very good, but they're all doing all these good things separately. We need to deliberately develop policy that comes and addresses all these challenges. Issues of intellectual property rights, issues of funding and refund, and there has to be an agency that will implement not just policy that exists, but who is going to implement these issues. We are talking about growth or answering solutions to public problems. But is there a repository or a place where we know this is where we are going to, these are the needs of the society? If we are looking at capacity or human resource, can Uganda say for a fact that in the next 5 years, these are the professions we need? Because we have identified or we have discovered petroleum, we need petroleum engineers. If we are talking about remuneration, why would somebody else who is doing generally a more proof of effort or recompensate effort, because you are in the right place and you know something else, you're making much more money than somebody who is actually doing the work? And these conversations, I think, are what will give us those solutions. We've taken the question and contributions seriously, and the idea or the theme of AHERI conferences is ideas to action. And so we will want to see that these conversations just don't end here, but at the next conference or in the next engagement, we have this conversation going on. We're identifying partnerships, we're identifying gaps and areas of overlap where through collaboration, we can strengthen and build on our synergies, and also through regional integration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know that it's very difficult to talk a few minutes to lunchtime because it makes me look like I'm standing between people and their food, which is a very precarious situation to find oneself. Most of the issues that were directed at me have been handled partly by my two colleagues. I will only comment about two things. I think it was Daniel. Daniel said something to the effect that there is a school of engineering somewhere, where students make very innovative things. Some publications that end up in museums. By the way, this is not something new. It happens all the time. And I mentioned during tea break that we have exhibitions. Even back in Kenya, we have trade fairs and exhibitions where very innovative people, very creative people make things. Some of them are engineers, some are not, but they make something which does not find its way into the real market. Why does that happen? Usually, it happens because we hardly come up with something that is completely new. So there will always be a ready product in the market which has been value added and can work. What's the use of trying to make a car here in Africa? You are wasting everybody's time because you know it will not work. Okay? You are going to compete the Prados and the Mercedes. My God, you need 1,000 years. Or you're trying to make a phone and you're sure you want to dedicate the rest of your life to produce a phone in Uganda. No. To me, that is not worthwhile enterprise. If you can dance, dance well and sell your dance. Someone will buy it. If you can run, sprint with all your heart. If you can draw, draw something. If you can carve, carve something. Don't try to make a computer. If you can repair it, go ahead and repair it. That's all I can say. Because we have to find practical and worthwhile use for our time. Mildred said something. How can artificial intelligence be used to free up time for faculty? Now, ladies and gentlemen, artificial intelligence is a very interesting thing. I believe that we don't have all the answers to this paradigm. It is a completely new pattern, and it is machine aided. And before you know it, it will be able to change our reality completely. Not long ago, even in Kenya, and I think it's happening here in Uganda, people put up buildings like this called hotels. Right now in Kenya, I do not know what the reality is here. Some other people have come up with an idea called Airbnb, an hotel where you go in and you get everything you need for your use. They are replacing hotels, and it's happening in less than 2 years. So artificial intelligence is something new. It is a resource that we have to make use of, and it could easily displace some of us, especially those of us who are in the academia. Right now, it is a real struggle to set exams. Okay? Because you set a question, the answers are there in the AI. All right? And you pretend to give students notes which they already have. And the AI you can set the exam if you're a teacher, like myself. The AI can set exams for you and mark them if you want by giving you a marking scheme. It's a new area, and I think this is something that I will take home. We need to think. But I have a comment about my brother Joshua here. When I met him with Daniel, was that a month ago? Yeah, we met in town in Kampala. We had a long conversation in the evening. And men are known not to converse over a bottle of water. So we had this conversation, and there's something that they keep saying. And I think it is informed by the division in which they serve in government. They are talking about a research paradigm which seeks to change the way we think about research. They flip the idea of research so that we don't stop at generation of knowledge alone. They want to go a step further and ensure that there is a utility dimension to research outputs. And this is something that we need to think about. Research should help us improve the way we live. Yeah. That would be my final comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. And please join me in appreciating the panel with a round of applause. Indeed, I think we cannot exhaust this subject of AI. It could maybe be a substantive issue of discussion in the next conference because indeed it is transforming teaching. It's transforming research. AI depends on research itself. So it cannot be a research item in itself because in the absence of research, then there is no AI. So we can't exhaust it in this particular meeting. Maybe it is something that we could focus on in the next meeting because basically it's the key thing or the thing of this decade. So with that, I'll appreciate you as well for your time. We can't clap for you as a panel, but we will take a photo in front of you. For our online viewers, thank you very much and see you shortly in the afternoon. Thank you.